everyone was there for everyone else's coverage. It wasn't a case of like people are going and getting a flat white and a cigarette while things are on kit.
I did that.
You did a bit, yeah, you did a bit.
We are all coming back. 1 minute out! We have enemy on our building and all surrounding buildings.
Hey, I'm Alex from IMDb, here with the cast of Warfare. Since this film is so much about the soldiers and their real experiences, I'd like to start with all of you introducing yourselves and who you play. Charles, I know you're keen on starting, so let's start with you, Charles.
I'm Charles Melton, and I play Jake, officer in charge for OP2 and OP3.
I'm DeFero Wanatai. I play Ray Mendoza.
I'm Joe Quinn, I play Sam.
Kit Connor, I play Tommy.
And I'm Will Poulter, and I play Captain Eric.
Okay, so DeFero, gonna start with you, since you portray Ray Mendoza, one of the real SEALs in the film, but also your co-writer and co-director. What was it about Ray's story that hooked you in from the start?
The script was something I never read before. I mean, I never actually read a war film prior, but the script was something I'd never seen before in a war movie. I love the idea of, in the lines, this idea of brotherhood. I got a chance to meet with Alex right after reading the script. Ray was there, didn't expect him to be there. I had a good few-hour lunch with them, got to discuss, and we less spoke about the script and more about just our upbringing. You know, Ray Mendoza was, born and raised in East LA. You know, I was born in Toronto, and they are separate, different places, but we had a very similar upbringing as people of color, really. And that was really it, because I didn't have to audition. I didn't audition. I just had that meeting with them. He just got my vibe, and I landed the role. And that's a big part that what Ray says is that he just wanted somebody that had a similar upbringing to him. I showed up to the meeting 30 minutes early, and I know that took into account.
Did it cross your mind that you'd be playing the guy who's literally on the other side of the camera telling you if you're doing a good job playing him?
Well, you think about that, right? Until you're actually there, right? It's just a whole different experience. You know, oh, it's gonna be fine. You know, I mean, I'll make him happy every single second. Nah. You know, it's a hard guy to make happy. You know, I mean, I had a different experience from these guys, right? I mean, everybody played a true-to-life person, and then some of them did come on set, but my guy was right behind the camera, right, and wrote this, and this is probably one of the most traumatic experiences of his life, right? He watched his best friend he thought was dead for a good portion of that experience, and so yeah, there was a lot of pressure, just besides having him behind the camera, knowing how important this story is, not just for Ray, but also for multiple veterans who, you know, need an outlet to, show their family how they may have felt or, what they may have went through. This project, I'm not a veteran, but this project may hopefully do that for a lot of them.
There's a lot of pressure which he handled brilliantly.
Yeah,
Thank you.
But you all were met with a lot of challenges to go through this, to get into, physical training and everything. Was that enticing, the challenge of it, the pressure of it, or was there something else that ultimately pulled you in?
The thing for me that I think ultimately was the most attractive aspect of this project was how it was seeking to kind of like break with convention as far as how like war is depicted. Quite honestly, when I was asked to meet with Alex initially, I was so excited because I wanted to work with Alex Garland more than anything else. Conceptually, I was in. It's an A24 film and it's Alex Garland, but my heart kind of sunk when I heard it was a war film. I think that's because there are a lot of war films, with the greatest of respect, that sometimes run the risk of kind of glorifying or like romanticizing what it is to be at war. And I think that one of the key goals in the making of this film was to not do that, was to kind of offer up something that was a very literal, apolitical, and objective depiction of a real life event with kind of authenticity and the reality of what happened being the kind of like the guiding light for how everything was done. So that was the thing that was most enticing to me.
Were you Alex Garland fans, and were you expecting some sort of sci-fi or horror twist?
When I first read the script, it was a bit of a shock, to be honest, because I think one of the main sort of conventions of Alex's writing in particular is taking incredibly grounded situations and atmospheres and environments that we know and having these almost supernatural or extraordinary events occurring in them, whereas this was just the most grounded, stripped back, authentic, unbiased portrayal that I could possibly imagine. And when I first read it, it kind of read a bit like a short film. You know, like a lot of short films, when they are aware of the fact that they don't have the time to have a climax or a beginning, middle, and an end, it's a space of time.
Right.
And this film really is that. It doesn't try to add things or manufacture moments that aren't there. I thought it was incredibly ballsy to be able to trust the audience to stay with these characters and with the events of the film, you know.
It's pretty incredible to think, too, about how the script really read kind of like a transcript, right? Based off of Ray's memory along with the servicemen in the platoon at the time that just, you know, confirmed every beat, you know, as we're experiencing the film, just reading it from beat to beat, we're watching each individual exist in real time, making split-second decisions through their trauma, like falling back on their military protocol. So it was very unlike anything I've ever read. Yeah.
It's very clear that from the script it was going to be an unconventional film, and to make unconventional films there's an unconventional process that follows it. And I think kind of what was amazing was leaning into this 3-week boot camp that we had, which you never really get. But if you're doing a play, you get 4 weeks rehearsal. And we rehearsed it like a play. And so that was really exciting. And it was clear that he had hired a group of stone cold professionals here. And that was certainly something that personally was very enticing to me. The fact that the company that I'd be keeping in this film, I've been very inspired by everyone's work here.
How's it going?
Going well. That's that new guy energy.
And I hear that first night, to begin the Brotherhood process, you shaved each other's heads, right?
Yeah.
Is that where it begins? Did somebody have a particular problem
Not just
with
the heads.
losing the locks?
Ray said, you know, the symbolism in shaving their heads and buds through the Navy SEALs program was just, it was a great equalizer. Everyone was starting at ground zero.
It was an incredible bonding experience, it really was. I was kind of nervous coming into that first day, wondering whether or not we were all going to get on and whether or not this job was going to be as difficult as it could have been or whatever. And then that first night when we shaved each other's heads, it was just like, oh, okay, I've never been on a job where everyone is so dedicated to it and egos at the door and just balls to the wall, let's do it. And even just the nature of the boot camp, a lot of the time when you're shooting a film and there is a boot camp and there's a training aspect, like a weight training aspect, a strength training aspect, a lot of the time that's for a sort of, you know, visual thing. You know, it's like, okay, let's all try and be in great shape for the role. But we were training purely so that we would be able to do the job. And that was, I think, the greatest motivator.
Right.
You know, it wasn't about, okay, that we got a shirtless scene, so we're going to take, you know, it was just...
Well,
you know, that was cut, But I feel like when I watch it, and I may be biased, but I buy every single one of the actors in that film, and it's because everyone worked their arse off in the training so that we could all kind of sink into it, essentially.
And it was a relief. I think there's a collective culture which you feel in the film. I think kind of with filmmaking, sometimes it can be a little isolating or a little, like, you don't really know where your place is within the project that you're like, sometimes you can join it later. Sometimes you can shoot your stuff in 2 weeks or something. With this, we really fostered this culture. And Ray said to us three, he was like, we are in charge of the culture there. But everyone committed to it. Everyone brought their own sense of play, their commitment, their own kind of, fears around it. There was a real culture of care and we had a laugh. We had a real laugh amongst all, you know, it's a complicated film. It's sensitive and it's delicate, but amongst that we had a real laugh.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little about those moments in your boot camp training. I'd love to ask a few about like who's most likely during that training, but I would also love to hear if you would answer with your boot camp nicknames. I know that there were some. I know, Will, you were Daddy. Kate, you were Babyface.
Yes.
All right, we might find out who Mommy is. So who was the cockiest going into boot camp? Oh,
no. I don't think anyone was cocky. Yeah. I think everyone was scared.
Yeah.
I think like there was an aspect of some people had done training like this a little bit before. So you had Taylor John Smith and Evan Holtzman who had kind of done similar training for.
I was in the best shape.
Films. You were in. I mean, he looked amazing.
He had a bandana on at one point.
That answers your first question.
But I think that those two, even then weren't cocky because it was such a, we knew that it was going to be a bit of a whirlwind, the training.
I guess it's the level of efficacy that is expected by the end of the 3 weeks to have with these weapons, because we're going in as complete novices,
Yes.
but then by the end of it we need to kind of represent these extraordinary military professionals, and so that kind of felt like a bit, there's a big gap there. So yeah, we were
Some of
nervous.
the highest trained as
Yes.
well, and you're in those moments where you're doing these long extended takes where you need to embody the role, but it's not necessarily that every beat of it is written out for you, so you just have to be in that mindset all the time, right? I mean, the camera might pass you by, you're idling in a corner, or you're waiting for your next moment to be activated.
Which was the brief from Alex, and thankfully Ray was such an extraordinary teacher and was so present for all of us, and would help us kind of flesh out moments where, because Alex wanted to be able to just pan to everyone, which I mean, you see the results of that in the film, but to make sure that we kind of could fill in those moments, that's why it was just so useful having Ray there, because he was just able to be, like, I mean, for you, I imagine you were able to ask him, like, what did you do here?
Yeah, oh, exactly.
But at the same time, Ray was contending with so many moving pieces during the process of it, so we were kind of, sometimes we would kind of burden it with questions that felt like maybe a bit annoying.
I thought it was interesting because, we did this 3 to 4 week boot camp, and it's obviously not the same what a lot of these guys go through for training. I mean, our film was 3 months. That's barely minimum what they have to go through just for buds or just for the training process, months on end, and we only had 3 weeks. But just that feeling when I was in the boot camp of waiting to get out there, waiting to film, right? I would only imagine that that's kind of a very similar feeling that these guys are feeling, right? While they're training, they're hyping themselves up after months and months of getting out there on the field, and getting out there to fight. And I'm not at all, I'm trying to compare myself, but I definitely had that similar feeling of I wanted to get out there too. I felt that among everybody. By the last few days of training boot camp, we were ready. Compared to the first few days, we were ready. Like, everybody was dedicated. Everybody finished doing 200 push-ups. You know what I mean? Everyone was ready.
There was a methodology with what Ray and Alex were doing with this whole boot camp, that not only were we learning about military tactics and how to move and how to communicate with brevity, but we were also rehearsing. There was an outline with tape in this hangar where we would put up blue dividers to create the set and rehearse it like a play, and it, which kind of informed what we would do on set when it was like these 12-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute long takes where people aren't just waiting for the camera to hit them and then they're acting for 30 seconds or you're doing insert shots. Everyone's finding work in the space, which is very human, and just, as you see from the film, just navigating the normalcy, the humanity in what these guys do.
Also, that idea of sort of maneuvering in a space and practicing, your movement through a space as a team of actors kind of mimics what would happen in training, where if you're doing close combat training, you maneuver through a very similar space so that when you end up having to clear a real world, building or, assault a target, you fall back on that training. So it was really interesting how even the kind of acting rehearsal sort of mimicked the kind of training principles of what, SEALs do.
We have severely wounded.
Who's severely wounded?
It's not you.
Is it me? Who is it?
No, it's not you.
Joe, I would like to ask, without spoiling anything, you have to play pain through a lot of this. How are you approaching that, playing this character who is dealing with so much pain, and how do you modulate that as the story unfolds?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when I was talking to Alex about the role, it was clear upon reading it that there was some complicated things in there. It's a delicate issue, and I was very fortunate to have access to Joe, and he came on set. And we weren't sure if he was going to be there, but I was so relieved that he was there. And obviously this is a very formative afternoon, and he lives with the consequences of this afternoon every day. And so obviously there needed to be some kind of a layer of sensitivity that I'd never experienced as an actor. Being in service of someone's story and being so close to the lived experiences of these men, I wasn't really focused on like my job of like playing pain or anything like that, and nor did my job feel any kind of different to everyone else. I think everyone had their their role to play. And as I said before, there was this collective culture, and no one was doing anything alone.
Right.
So that was the great gift of it. Myself and Cosmo are both have to explore that stuff in this film, but it wasn't a cross to bear, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone was there with me there and with Cosmo there, so it was great.
And we usually ask the actor who plays the pain, you know, what it was like for them, but what was it like for all of you? I mean, you've formed these bonds.
I was about to say.
Yeah, you're brothers, and then now you're looking at him
Right.
screaming and you know, in trauma.
Right. Well, I was about to say, I worked very closely with Joe on a lot of traumatic screaming scenes, as you know. It was a lot. I mean, as an actor, he did an amazing job. I mean, to be able to scream for days on end, for hours at a time, and to redo that, the exact same tone, the exact same pitch, the exact same pain in his eyes, it's incredible. It's an understatement to make, really, you know?
I also found it incredibly, you know, I'm not trying to toot your horn too much here, but I think that I found it was an incredible feat to be able to do that. And also I think watching you adjust and work out how you were gonna get this job done in a way. And, you know, I remember one instance of your kind of generosity as an actor in which it was my coverage and I was reacting, I think it's as soon as your body had first been kind of pulled into the house, and my reaction to your body, and it was just like you knew that you weren't going to be able to scream because you had another, like, you know, you'd been screaming all day, and it was, I think, one of the last shots of the day, and yet you were able to give me so much intensity and life and genuine, like, gut-wrenching pain that was, you know, I don't know what I would have done from an acting perspective. It would have been a lot harder for
Can
me.
I just hop on that too quickly? You
Please
know,
do.
again, you know, yes, Joseph right here. I mean, camera on him or not, you know, he's in it, you know, 110%. And you know, and as an actor, when again, a lot of times it would be on me, coverage on me. This is the best co-actor to work with. He'll give you 110% of the energy, match it completely the exact same way, and then do that 100 times more. You know. I just wanted to add on that again, because this guy really did it, man. I mean, yes, everybody had, you know, had exhausting days, you know, but him and Cosmo specifically had to go through it, in my opinion, the worst, you know.
It was, you know, in long days, long takes, all 13 guys to cover, you know, and imagine running like 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 takes for 15 minutes, and the camera's like on you, and we don't see Joe or Cosmo, and again, piggybacking off of everyone, like the generosity that everyone gave. But, you know, I remember looking at Joe and Cosmo's eyes. When the camera's on you, they're looking right at you. They're giving you everything. Yeah. And sometimes we would do these goldfish takes where it feels kind of silly, but we were just so in the pocket, locked in, where people are miming their words while the camera's floating, and like, he's giving everything. Cosmo's giving everything. So it just is the generosity and the selflessness, I think, in Joe and Cosmo were going through that for like 2 or 3 weeks, every take. Insane.
Yeah.
Emotionally and physically exhausting, and then just, it was really, truly incredible. And I think I can speak for all of us that it just made us better actors, better people. And, you know, because usually, you know, there are particular projects, depending on what you're doing, when, you know, you can always take it off when the camera's not on you, right? And in this, it was 1,000%. When Kit was up, it was all right. Kit's up, let's go. Got amped up, all right, it's Will, let's go. DP, you just, yeah.
But it's because of the nature of the material was so rare. Like, you're never gonna really get to do this stuff, and it was very clear, like, because of the love and the closeness of all of these guys, that Alex just from a professional perspective, Alex needed like stuff that is gonna cut together. And in terms of like it feeling kinetic and it feeling frantic and it feeling authentic, everyone was there for everyone else's coverage. It wasn't a case of like people are going and getting a flat white and a cigarette while things are on Kit.
I did
like
that.
you did a bit. Yeah, you did a bit.
Well, you only came in the second
Yeah,
half. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, exactly. But I think it was that which is a very rare thing on a film set. And the best thing about making films is being a part of something, is feeling useful. And I think that we all felt that, and were able to feel it for something other than like getting a good coverage for our take.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
being as present, like your take's done, great. Your work's not done for the day, and that was a beautiful kind of filmmaking experience amongst a really barbaric one, context even.